My name's Turk Russell. I'm the past president. I just resigned from Susquehanna Valley Garden Railroaders in York, Pennsylvania. If you've all ever been to the large-scale shows in York, Pennsylvania, we were the ones where you walked into the foyer. I was the log train guy, my best friend. My buddy Barry here's like a second dad to me. He helps with that stuff too. So that's who we are for building trains and stuff. So they asked me to speak tonight. My friend Don Sweet was going to come speak about battery control. You couldn't make it, so you're stuck with me. So I owned a stereo shop before I did all this stuff as well. So I was using moonlighting on trains in the evening and fixing CD players and cassette players back in the day, and everybody can remember that, like when we had hair. So what I thought I'd do tonight is going to be a little different than what I've spoken about before. Was you guys are all LGB mainly. I'm sure everybody has Bachman and USA and some others. So I thought I'd start with some simple things where I can ask you guys. We're going to participate as well as me giving you an education. So we're going to start off. Everybody knows what these are. Everybody's owned a stance, right?
Yep.
Can anyone tell me the difference between the two of them?
Growlers.
Okay, you're good, but that's not going to count. What'd you say?
Growlers, the first one, so gears were different.
Correct. But if the first one, as you know, was really the German engineering, keep your hands out of the inside of it because it's a split case box, pain in the butt to take apart, as we all know. You have to dismantle the whole thing. About the only thing worse is a new Pico engine. And of course, then we graduated to these, where we got rid of metal side rods, went to plastics, but they were easy to get to. Okay? So besides skid shoes, what goes wrong with these things? Motors, just like in a mobile, right? Why do the motors burn up? Besides catching on a switch or something, why do they go bad? That's a good one. I've not heard that. Oh, I lost my first. Well, the main reason is lubrication. That's a big thing. I'm a gear lube guy. I run a Honda Acura shop for my real job. Okay, so it's all about lubrication. And majority of these have these little ferrule brass ends on each one. You drop a little bit of oil in there, not always on the gears, and you're going to find that it's going to last a lot forever, not going to get all wobbly and out of control, which in turn does what? Eats up our gears, right? So the old style, which you're all probably familiar with somewhere along the line, had removable brushes. They were from Germany. That is no longer. Now we are with China. Okay? So I recommend that to everybody. If you get a mogul or any train at show, unless it's from us, because Barry and I lube everything, take it apart in the bottom and put some oil on the ends of those motor shafts. We're all taught to grease gears and everything, but this is one way to save your motor because they're not $35 anymore. Everybody knows they're $59 to $69 now. Okay? And, even if you do have an old one, there's still a few that you can get the old little red and black inserts for the old motors, okay? But most of the time they won't last. So the next thing that goes out on them is what? Our gears, right? We get stuck on a switch, we have a problem, they get cracked, right? Axle gears all the time, right? Still available now after many, many years, not kidding, them based on coming from Hungary, back into China, back into Germany, right? Now, if you run a stance a lot, like our club did, or had them converted over maybe like the modern style train, you can get a brass gear. And we have that celebrity in the crowd tonight that builds that, Jerry back there. Still a lot of gears for us, okay? He's the man that he can design for moguls and for trolleys and for stances. And if they don't have it, he'll make it. You may not like what it costs, but he'll make it. And it'll work. So that's something to go with that. So I wanted to let you know that. I mean, not all trains have gear problems. So next thing on our locomotive. We've all got skid shoes, right? Okay. Easy to replace on a stance. But on the mogul, we've got those little slide tabs. I tell people a lot of times when my train doesn't run right, I took the case off the bottom. A lot of times our issue are these wonderful brass tabs that carry the power from the front to the back. If you've ever taken the back off a mogul or an F7 unit or diesel, you'll see these in here, okay? And sometimes they're a little bent or the motor doesn't quite get down with those little bent rods or when they go in there, we've all had that. I tell them, bend the rod up or bend this down because a lot of times that connection won't go. The trolleys, like the New Orleans trolleys, they are notorious for these issues. Guys will tell you, Bart Barry and I sat there and go, what the hell, it ran a minute ago, now it doesn't. They have admitted that they have those seated just a little bit low. We have found that if you take a little piece of thin leather or a real thin piece of plastic and put on top before you screw those two center screws on the outside, it will work perfect then. Enough compression on that to make it go. Just a tip tech for everybody. Okay?
That's
I'm glad
very
you like
good.
I'm glad you like that. So anyway, tell me what else about LGB engines that can be different. Like this critter, for example. Anybody?
Different motor, different gear.
Correct, sir. But China and Korea based, plus Germany along the way a little bit. If they have a brass whistle, they're Korean made. Unfortunately, they all look the same. You know, whether you're buying a Lehman product, an LGB, everybody likes the little tank logos or the ones like the cow train or whatever. So they look the same, but when you get inside, and I should have brought one, but I didn't have one. These are sought after, but the motor is flat side on one side. Nobody's got the motors. Train Lee has gears, but that won't do any good. Where I guess Jerry could probably make the gears for those.
Well, they buy it from me.
They buy them. So we've already got, again, we have the expert in the house tonight, okay? So the problem with this is everybody likes the porters, but how do you know the difference? If it's got a plastic whistle on top, it's a Chinese/German. If it's got a brass hard whistle like that, it's made in Korea. You might as well say no parts available because even if Jerry gets you the gears, all the motors are obsolete. I have tried.
You can't find.
Thank you. Even in Germany, through my sources, do not have. So, can you switch them over to another one? It will not look right because the mounting on the bottom's off, but the gearboxes do not change over because they're built into the body. Unlike what you're used to from your regular LG frames, and I'll just grab an 040 in here, a tender block. They will not fit, so it's a complete plastic design mount. So these are a little bit of an eyesore, even though everybody loves them, and they run really well forever. So if you run into that, yeah, make sure you take that bottom case off and make sure you lube them because we don't know how long they'll last. How many times we've been to a training show and it runs perfect, you get home and it's like, well then like a month or two later it doesn't work and you take the bottom off and it looks like all honey gel or globbed up glue. Clean. So that's my next question. Everybody in here probably has questions about using greases and stuff. Okay? The sleeper of all greases is the ice cream machine super lube that you can buy at Harbor Freight or a hardware store. A lot of people don't know this, okay? But it was designed to do ice cream machines. My buddy owned a Golden Prize. I knew this from 20 years ago. It's cheap. It's a lot cheaper than you buying this thing, which is almost obsolete for $12 to $15 one. Because you can buy these. What are they, Andrew? About $5, $4.99.
$5-6 for
Yeah.
tube of it at Harbor Freight.
Yeah, $5-6.
What's the name of it?
Super Lube from Permatex. Okay. Now, the next thing we were talking about lubing these motors on the ends. Even though everybody probably has some type of Labelle oil in their whole ordeal, I'll tell you what, this overpriced Bachmann red synthetic oil, it's phenomenal. They come in these. They come in this style now, but this stuff is a synthetic base, and I'm telling you, out of all the ones, it's the best of all.
That's the same as LGB used to put out a red glue in the tube.
Well, no, it's kind of, but not really. We really didn't have the synthetics back then that we have now. Bachmann didn't make this stuff. It's another source stuff that they had, and it sold so well they kept it in the line. You know, being that I'm a Honda Acura guy, we're all about, you know, half synthetics, synthetic blends, you know, 0-20 full synthetic oils and all that stuff. And I tell guys, this stuff will outdo this any day of the week. Not that there's anything wrong with this, using the light or the gear oil, but this stuff is just better, especially when you've got tight confinements like the end of the motor blocks. We're still all about using, Labelle grease or the regular XL grease for your gears, or even the LGB or the Super Lube, and less is better. We don't need to coat the whole entire gearbox like it's the Cheyenne Pass that needs to be lubed every 6 hours encased in there. I find a lot of times, depending on your running conditions where you're at, they'll overheat and it'll melt inside and you get cracks. Okay? Questions on that?
If you lube it too much, it'll overheat yourself.
Because people will take and literally pack in one here. It's gonna bring one, but I've had them where like this is a problem of Aristo. They'll completely pack the whole thing in grease.
Wow.
So what happens is the property, the petroleum may not agree with the plastics under that much. If you run them out in the sun, say you're in Florida, South Carolina, even Pennsylvania for that fact, if you run them for hours, if you're running them for 10 minutes, it doesn't matter. If you run them inside, not bad. We take them apart and we got cracks, and what happens is it gets in the back of the motor and boom, they go. So that's what I wanted to go over with that.
So how much do you write? Just a very, very light,
Actually,
just a very light coat? Or?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. In fact, I'm just going to show you here. We're going to pick up a gear, and we're going to do this here.
And just
Go around the gear.
So if everybody can see this, and I'm just going to use this because this tube's easier. I will take and I'll just go, now see how much is on there?
okay.
Everybody see that? I will just spread that the whole way around and you're done. That's it.
Okay.
We don't need to go freaking crazy with it, okay?
Yes.
Well, and the stuff is so much better nowadays we're dealing with. It's not globbed up stuff that's going to dry apart and get all milky and bad on you down the road a little bit. Okay? So that's important. Now the next thing, and this is a product probably a lot of people don't know about this, Easy Lube conductive stuff. Literally, I've taken trains that don't want to go from the brushes on the bottom, and you put a dab of this on the wheels, it will actually clean the carbon brushes up, and then you can take a Q-tip and go across the back of the wheel, and it'll start going faster on the power pack. Like when you're running,
Oh, really?
It'll speed up by usually 10%. This is great. I've had guys tell me they put it on their track. I would not do that, but it is every train that Barry and I fixed. We put it on the bottom of the blocks, right in where the brushes are. Just a dab on each one, run it through, and then wipe, and man, it makes a big difference.
Well, you were saying on the tracks, it used to be a trick in HO, you'd put clipping oil on there.
That's correct, from dog clipper stuff.
Yeah, for what barbers use for their clippers.
And what we were doing was, trying to create, because of a weight problem with HO, to make that conductive more. You could use that, but I think it would, for us with G-scale, it would slime up the traction tires and the rest of it.
I've seen Easy Lube on eBay, but it's a different color. They make several.
I never knew anybody had this, and LaBelle got rid of it. So they don't have anymore, so I'm still getting it from Bachman.
I mean, if you go on eBay, you'll see something come up. I think it says Easy Lube. And I've always wondered about it. I
If
never
it's a
bought it.
conductive lube,
Well, it doesn't. It's almost looks like LaBelle oil.
but that's probably for doing the gears and the motor, probably not for doing just pickup. This is strictly conductive. I mean, you could spray that between the tracks, like instead of using conductive paste, we all get rid of our rail joiners,
Yeah.
and well, some of us do, and then switch over to split jaw, rail clamps or whatever. Okay, so you could use that for that, but it wouldn't last as good as paste. I'm just telling you, if you run your trains a lot like our club does, for example, we do for the park service in York from Black Friday to New Year's.
Huh.
And it's like cold as crap. They only turn the little heaters on in that huge room, which is 3 times this size, at 5:45, and it runs from 6 to 9 and 5 to 9 every night. It's harsh environment on the trains. You get all that black and stuff. This makes a big difference. It does. It makes your trains go a little bit better. So something to think of. Questions?
That was called.
Conduct easy, yeah. All the Bachman stuff called easy lube, but it's conductive lube.
Conductive.
Conduct. Yep. You're welcome.
And where do you primarily use that on? Did you say on wheel?
That would be on the mechanism where your brushes pick up, any pickup point. Okay, for that. All right. Yeah, like when you have like the USA's where it's inside with the little wire, you can put it inside where that picks up. All right.
What was the other?
That is the red synthetic.
That's for what you use.
That's for using on the motor. You can even put a dab of oil on the gears for that. I'm still a grease man on gears. So Jerry left, so he isn't here to back me up on that, but that'll give you something to go on. So the number one problem we have nowadays is, let's say we've broken a gear on a train and we can't get it. So now we're forced to decide if we're going to buy axles. All you LGV guys know how that is. You know, set of axles can be $20, $40, $75, whatever it may be. Jerry is the man, you can press this stuff apart. If you have ones with the screws that come off, like the old trains we had back in the day, that's fine. Most of the stuff nowadays, you know, like these, for example, the original ones had the flat screws. You could take your wheel off, no problem. Okay, you didn't put it in place. You don't even need a gear press to do it. Put it in place, you can slide it off. With the newer ones, it's a lot more complicated because now you've got to come up with that 12 and 3 or 9 and 12 to get it lined up. I tell most guys, don't do it. Pay somebody better to do it. It's going to be simpler because what happens is you're going to be like this or you're going to be like that. It's not going to be perfectly quartered. And if you love steam engines as much as I do, it's got to be right, especially when they get worn. No, we don't need them for now. We're a good thing. So, talking about steam engines, that's my next thing I want to go over. So we've talked about lube and everything. This is the bottom of a Mikado, okay? Quartering is the biggest problem, okay? Not for LGB or Bachmann. Aristo has this problem progressively. But what do I do to keep this stuff in line? Okay, if you take it apart, how do I take it back up and set it in place? Okay, I always tell guys, if you can take a little ruler or your T-ruler and set it up, that's the easiest way just to line it up and take the first and the last wheel, and that'll get you lined up. Okay, but remember when you do this, okay, you want to test the mechanism to roll it through slow, so that if you get that vroom, vroom, you're out. Okay, so you're out of time. Or, which happens in a lot of LGB, where the wheel sets in place. All our newer trains started using like a brass ferrule or like a bearing to hold them in place. LGB did not do that because their plastics were BASF, kind of a fiber / plastic fiber, and they tolerated good. If that gets a slot worn out of it, there is no fixing that. You have to buy chassis. So that's a if you've ever had a mogul where it does it boom, boom, and you know you've had it in time, you've taken it to repair shop and it comes back that way, that slotting can cause a problem. It's not happened a lot, but if they've had the hell run out of them or used heavily and you bought it from someone at a show or whatever, that gives you kind of the sample of what you can run into. All right? And you were asking me about the conductive lead. Okay, we got the pickups for regular LGB on the back here. We can put them on each side of that where the brushes touch. Anywhere we got a brush or a friction thing. You know, Bachmann cars, aristo-craft, especially with their cars, they got drag in them. You can put that conductor lead, man, that'll make them spin better. Okay? Questions so far? Okay? So, I'm going to kind of jump back over here to the Mikado. How many people here have a Mikado or have had one? Love the train, but what's wrong with it? That's correct. It was a wonderful design with that articulated swiveling mechanism. I even have one of their K28s that Barry and I bought.
The railroad would have really loved that.
I don't think so. They'd have hated it.
Well,
Probably.
what I'm saying is that was always a problem with the locomotive. You couldn't bend the frame to go
Hey,
around.
we can
the
go
curve.
around 4-foot curves with everything. We're home free, right?
Yeah.
So one of the biggest problems that LGB has is ventilation. Okay. So I took this cover. I'll tell you, the number one first thing they have us do is drill holes in the top of the cage. Nobody wants to damage their LGB engine, but I'll tell you right now, if you put 6 holes in this for this motor, which is nothing but a 62-201 motor extended, you will find it will run a lot cooler and better. Do I recommend pulling more than 5 cars behind these? No, even though they'll pull 22 nicely. And the problem with that mechanism is, like you said, the gears. If anyone's ever had one apart, I was going to get this apart, but I just didn't get time tonight to show you. You know, there was 2 styles. The motor came out with a coupling gear that was plastic. followed by the shaft with a brass gear goes in that. Well, when you run that down there through 3 times, what happens? Shred city, because you got traction tires, the locomotive's got too much power, so the weak point was the gear, and it was that coupling. What they did was they changed that over to a metal one with a paddle. Has anybody ever seen that? Instead of a gear, it's got a paddle with a slot in it. That paddle actually had play, and it actually, there's no way to tell. I wish I could tell you guys when you pick up a box, can you see the difference? Nope, not unless it was like a newer version. Okay, these were designed in America and built, some in Germany, but some of them were built in Hungary. They did get some Chinese mechanisms with them, but that's, so if you find one's got a paddle in it, you just open that up. That's the good mechanism. The ones with the coupling gear where it goes inside, they will shred. They'll work, but don't go pulling 15, 20 cars. Go with less cars. Less is better.
So the gears of the original ones were plastic with a
Plastic with a brass,
brass.
yep, that went
And
inside.
so
It was so small, and for LGB to make such a small coupling of that, they could have made it bigger. I don't know why they designed it like that, but that's what they did, and it would just shred that outside sprocketing, so to speak. The brass gear and the rod never had a problem going down through there. But that,
they had a fix. Now, was that what you were talking about, the metal gear?
well, it actually, the metal gear is not the problem. It's from the motor with the shaft that's got that plastic housing that it goes into. So they don't sell those paddle setups. Not that I know of.
What's a paddle setup?
Okay, so what I guess it's hard. I almost need to draw it. Basically, what you had was you had an outside with inside teeth, and the gear went inside. The plastic on the outside. The new replacement was like a pawl, and this went inside of it. So it was metal in the metal. It was perfect. You could turn it and never have a problem. Okay, but you don't know till you do it.
And how do you get that part?
Train Lee, Axel was the only one who was able to get those from Germany. I deal with a bunch of different people with LGB. Only Train's a really good supplier for me, and I really like Terry there, but they have to come from Model Land in Germany. If anyone's ever heard of that. Model Land is the producer for the past 10 years that took care of what was left of the LGB stuff, and that is where Axel and Joan get their stuff from Germany to us.
So it might be worth asking Jerry about that, because I took one to him that it turned out it just needed to be cleaned. But I think he said to me, if we have a problem with the coupling, I have one.
We should ask. I've never asked him on that. In my 25 years, there's things I always learn to do, but that would have been good to have him to ask me. Because that's the only engine out of everything we're going to talk about here that's got that oddball outside with inside sprocket with a brass gear going in. Nobody else does that. When they run, they're beautiful. We all like them, and they look good. There's nice mirror. But if you all own them, I tell you, vent that box on top, drill it out. Okay? This mechanism is one I have for sale for a client, so I don't drill them until I'm allowed to. Okay?
So drilling it and also reducing the number of cars pointed might prolong the life of that.
Less is better. We all struggle. Everybody say, man, my motor will pull 20-some cars. I'm like, please do it, because I'm going to get a motor and gear job out of you sooner or later. Okay? You're going to rip the tracks out. But yes, it's too bad the structure of this could not combine into this. But I tell all my people with the Mikado, please do not pull a lot of cars unless you know it's got a paddle. Okay?
One other thing I learned years ago when I bought those, and I heard about the defect, Ron Gibson told some of us that Johannes told him that they're good for 600 hours and that's about it, and then he would have this problem. But I guess
600 hours would be a fantasy in my opinion.
Based upon what you're saying, it sounds good.
I'm saying I had guys in here with less than 30 hours. Less than that. And it depends, everybody's been in a club or somewhere where there's always the guy that wants to mess everything up or put on 30 cars of his own, and some of them are ball bearing wheels, some of them are dragging, and let him put one of those on there and see how, after it starts getting skitter bugs with it, if they probably would have had traction tires, which we all have a love-hate relationship with that. You need it for some instances, and other ones you don't. But they serve a purpose. If they were probably going, the locomotive just skittered along on itself, and then you knew what the weight ratio of what it could tow, probably that gear company would survive better. But the locomotive won't go right without it. So, all right. So I wanted to go over that with you guys. The last thing we're talking about LGB is the least problem part, really. That's the brush piece with the spring load that fits into almost every locomotive setting up here. Okay? Again, I get these stuck all the time where they're jammed. You ran around the loop 400 times, then you run it the other way, it doesn't run right. Our little buddy, the conductive loop. Frees that up, makes it go better. Okay? All right, the last LGB engine I want to go over is the Mallet. Okay, Unitah, or this is a custom one I did in Western Mass. Does anybody have one of the Sumter Valley engines here? Familiar with them? Okay. Have you had any motor problems? Okay. Well, they are notorious for taking out the second motor block in them if you're running them on hot side. And that is because the front one can slip out pretty easy. The back one has to carry the draw with it. Okay. There is no fix for it, but you can vent the top of the gearbox. Again, like I told you, I mean, none of us, I'm not a modifications guy. In fact, I like maybe doing weathering stuff, but I'm kind of old school the way LGB wanted it. You know, nowadays everybody wants to modify everything. But I'm telling you, getting the vent hole in them makes a big difference. And we can, I usually use a 1/4 inch bit. 1/4 inch bit. On these big ones here, you could probably even do halves if you wanted to cross there. But I usually do 6 1/4 ones, spread them apart, do it.
And that's what you do on the Sumter Valley too? 6?
I usually put 4 on that, that's it. 4 on this, because it's a different style block. Okay? The moguls don't ever seem to have a problem with that. I guess there's enough dispersion in the gearbox that it doesn't matter. Okay? But anyway, I figured they're reliable as heck, but I ran the Unitahs a couple times at our big shows in Harrisburg and started getting slower and going along like, what is going on? You know? So you get a hold of the LGB and you have to pry it out of them that, okay, it's a possibility that, you drug it too long, we're getting heat ratio in the back versus the front. So that's what heat's the killer, we all know. All right, any other questions on that? Yeah.
Taking the traction tires off, so if you're pulling too much weight, it starts to happen.
Well, that's what I was saying about the Mikata, but the LGB has such a big taper, I think you're just going to make the thing wobble down the track. I like that as an example where you need. I've run moguls without them. If you're running in a restaurant with 3 or 4 cars, it probably make a whole lot of difference. But we all don't do that in most cases. If you've ever had an open house, we all know we want to show that nice crane or double head. We're all sitting there going, please God, do not have everybody touch it or go bad. We are risking when we do that. The engines weren't designed for that, but we all want it because it looks cool, right? So I like it too. I'm no different than that. But I would say do not take it off unless you got a machinist. I've had machine shop guys with 30 coming few and far redo wheels on those, and then I'm like, take it off this time. Where a client wants to run a train, he's like, man, I've got like 30 wheels, I can't afford to do it. And I'm like, well, we'll get a mill. Because I got a retired guy that still does that. So if you get a mill down, you could go without it. But none of them done it with the mallet, so I can't answer that.
Not the Sumter Valley, but the Unitah that they made. I have a friend, he picked up 2 of them used. Another friend got the second one. The person that had them actually got replacement wheels to get rid of the traction tires.
Well,
and without the traction tires, he said he had a hard time getting it to pull about 6 cars. He actually found someone that was a machinist on the side and actually had the wheels machined so he could put traction tires back on.
You're getting ahead of me. So
Yeah.
he was asking about that.
Yeah,
right?
that's why I wanted to say that.
You could buy the drivers for the front, okay, or the rear without depending on the locomotive, because the foreign version, the 0660 that they made, doesn't have them. So you could buy a driver from that and go without traction. Thank you for bringing that up, Andrew.
But
I recommend
without the weight,
against it
though,
because
But you lose traction.
big time. If the engines are weighted heavily, like some of the Bachmans and the Aristos USA, I'd say fine, but they've got it designed to have it on there, and it's something we're gonna live. You know,
I know the Wilson brother will pull the whole train. When I got the whole train completed, I wanted, it'll pull it, but you're saying not running with that.
it's
many cars.
durability, will it last? You know,
Yeah,
and you're talking, how many cars you got on this?
it's 11.
11 cars, okay.
But the one car with the flat with the bulldozer on it, that's a lot of weight.
And so
I
then,
actually set up, it was flat track, I set up my basement, big circle, I wanted to just see if it would pull the train, cause I actually thought but it did, but you're saying, don't pull that many cars.
ball bearing wheels.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to spend the money, but if you love your trains, that is our next step to get less friction
Yeah,
to the track. But you're right, it's like when Aristocraft came out of Pacific and then made 5 heavyweights. It's a fantasy island that train's gonna pull them, and they really weren't designed double head, and they're jumping down the track, same problem, But you know your limitations. Most LGB guys learn real quick when it costs to fix. Guys with the others do not learn so fast. So, if you do ball bearing wheels or double head with a mogul, you're home free. Double head. So that's what I wanted to wear with LGB. I was told, most of the guys didn't do Bachman, so I thought, well, I'll do a little bit of Aristo and USA just to give you guys some other samples that we run into. Okay.
I got a question about the Bachman Mobile, so what about that gear?
The Bachman Mogul, you mean the wee little 260 they make?
Well, no, the bigger one, the fancier
Oh,
one.
the fancy one,
And
yes.
then Bachman's fix was to square the axle so that you,
Yeah, Barry and I just did it last week. We do them all the time.
well, the new.
We hate it.
Yeah,
That's a complicated engine to take apart and put back together.
yeah,
I usually do the boxes, so I have them pre-done. So when him and I are gonna work after me working all day Tuesday, and then he comes out at 7, we gotta work till 10:30 or 11.
what do you charge to change that gear?
$45.
Well, that's not that bad.
That's cheap. Most guys
No,
don't.
because I built an Astra YB engine.
Right,
Granted, you just assemble it.
but they do
But
not
I
have.
looked at that mogul and I'm thinking, because mine, I put it on the track and it's all you hear the motor go.
Right.
And I mean, it never ran. It
Right.
never ran. The gear split by itself. And then I talked to the guy at Bachman, he goes, "Oh well, the new one's got a square axle. So even
But
if the gear splits,
that's not gonna fix the problem.
no,
They still split. We're gonna get off subject here, but it started with the 280 outside rod engine, which was a beautiful engine. It was designed to compete with AccuCraft's K27, K28, but AccuCraft had a patent. So they made that Mexicano version so they wouldn't violate that patent. That's why everybody asked, why did we never see any outside rod engines but AccuCraft in Berlin? Because they owned the royalties for 20 years. So Bachmann went backwards and made that 280 with that small motor with a bigger axle and gear, and they just shredded that gear. In turn, they came out with a brass one about 10 years ago. I stocked them. It goes into 3 other idler gears, and it works. They didn't do anything with the 260 or the 440 unless you buy a brand new mechanism, a brand new train, which they just released 3 years ago, which is completely different inside. So you can't interchange like you could before. And the D-ring gear, I hate to tell you this, most of the axles that came out of them, they're still not D-cut. So Barry and I have to friggin' cut those things with the Dremel, get them in the press, clean it, and then press it on, send the engine back in service.
oh yeah, I researched the thing on the internet.
Northwest Shortline had them, but he had them listed wrong. I think they were 25 teeth instead of 24. So some friends had told me it didn't work, and I was like, look, if somebody's got something better other than Jerry, I trust him, but I usually use the factory and I can just complain to them about it because I've known the service manager and the VP for years. So, but Bachman's another subject. So I want to talk a little bit about original mechanisms. Now, we all know Aristo, and this is actually not even the first mechanism off the diesel or a little critter. This is actually the second, even though it's got the chrome wheels, points. The first ones were solid, burned up motors. Second ones came with slots in them. Okay, these things are actually fairly reliable for all plastic gears. The problem is the weighting on the outside was what it used for a pickup. There was no pickup. And then the chrome plated wheels dissolved apart, and then they would go down the track and jerk, and we'd all be cursing. We'd say, let's put an LGB on and be done with it. So the second generation of these, he came out with he had upgraded, which I'll show you guys a little bit closer here when I find it. Well, anyway, they came out with fat wheels to make more contact, try and make it better with a traction tire. Okay. The inside of these, if anybody's ever seen inside of them, okay, has brass pickups that go inside to a miniature ball bearing. Okay. And then on this side, it's ball bearings on an axle. All right. The original Aristos were not too bad. All right. Y'all can see that. See that axle that's chewed down like the beaver went to town on it? Okay? If you didn't lube the ball bearing, it melted the wheel setup where it picks up and the little thin wire inside. Okay? So we're like, okay, we'll live with that. We can get another motor block. They were cheap back then, $35, $40, nobody cared. We have this brand new motor block. Every time Rich Janazik did the show 8 years ago, hey, if you're going to bring out the egg liner, so they've got a Chinese bearing in it, which has got about half the amount of balls inside of what the original 5 balls versus 8 or 9 that's in the original. So when Barry and I were upgrading a lot of these trains for restaurants and stuff like that, we like the diesel, we like that RS3, we like this engine, we want to fix it, right? Okay. Put the new motor blocks in because you couldn't get parts. Navin was done with all that stuff. They run about 3 months and they're done. Are they done? Crappy ball bearings, and they would chew up these axles. And by the time you get them, you have to just basically grab a hold and say, well, I got play in there. Is that the gear or is that the box or what it is? It was the bearings chewing them up. So for the past, I guess I'd say about 6 years, we had no access to this. Andrew's friend, Nico Corba, have you ever heard Nico's name mentioned anywhere? Nico, another guy, purchased what was left of Navin stock from Aristo, and these were available. They're not no $8 anymore, but they're available. And then I tell everybody, if you get an aristo-craft train, now you have to decide, and it runs perfect. Oh my gosh, it's got those nice ball bearing wheels, and does it got Chinese in it? Does it have a Bachmann? How are you going to tell? They look identical. The only difference was Bachmann changed the wiring harness for us, which doesn't plug into anything except their new egg liner board, which has LED in it. That's it. So now you have to do the rewire to fit the aristo-craft one. And it could be the 4-pin. It could be the old, like this one here with the old 4-pin or the double 2-pin. It could be either or. So they last good. Will I say they're better than the LGV mechanism? Absolutely not. But for the most part, in diesels and stuff, the Aristos run good. But I tell everybody again, take a look when you pick that up. Say to yourself, okay, how much play's in that? Okay, it's not like the front swivel; it's the back, and you want to grab. If it's got excessive play, that axle's already starting to get eaten. You can buy the ball bearings on Amazon. You can buy them on eBay. You can call Turk Russell. You can call anybody. I buy them from Japan because the Japanese still make some of the best parts out there. And, they're like, I think $1.10 cost to put them in. So I get them here, they're like $2 or $3. But anyway, most of the new trains we're buying, we're taking them apart and pulling the wheels off of them and putting the new ball bearings in them. So when you give it back to the customer, nobody wants to hear this after they bought a locomotive. But guess what? Now I've created the durability of what one of these is. And that's the hard part to do nowadays. We all want things to last like it used to, right? Yes. Questions on that? And I have lots of samples if you guys want to come up here and look.
So is this all Aristo motor blocks or just the egg line?
RS3, FA, egg liner, U25, all share the same. GP40, SD70, yeah, they're completely different. Completely different.
About the FA.
Yeah, FA, sorry, forgot the most important one. The FA. The original.
So in other words, you're basically showing.
Well, no, it depends on how you feel about that. If you've got a motor out of them and you got gears out of them, they're shelf grips. Because I mean, we fix this stuff all the time, Barry and I do. And what I say is, I was one of you guys. This is a sideline hobby for me. I am not running a big hobby shop to make money. But last year, Barry and I did 140 locomotives and 30 cars. So we do enough to keep us busy for doing it 1 or 2 nights a week. The problem we are is how can we save you money? And if you take it into most hobby shops, it's $45 to $60 labor. I know Train Lee, I think it's 70 just to even look at them. So you can't buy the motor. I bought the last ones Navin had 4 years ago, and there are no more U25s. There's 40 motors, 70, and I don't know why no one's making it. Yes,
Nico, I believe, has the GP40 motor still on his
he
site.
does. I said everything but the
Oh, but okay.
You can't buy, so that limits us. We all got FAs, RS3s, little critters, like this. That limits us. So now you're back to the Bachmann motor block. Now I've got to dish out $89 to $95 for this. How much do I love my train? And plus, Turk's telling me I got to take the wheels off, open the case, and put in better bearings. I charge $230 to redo an engine, and that is not that much money when you figure you're paying $80-some for a motor block, plus taking it apart, changing the wiring, putting the balls, bearings in it, switch it over. But that's what you can run into. Okay, so if you like your aristo-craft trains and say, "Oh, let's go on eBay and buy another one. Maybe I'll get one for $120, $160." We're still all going down the same route because it's longevity, right? In my opinion, nothing lasts as long as what our LGB trains do. The other ones you might get lucky, but these are things we all see, and that's the problems we deal with.
So is it a problem with the SD45 and the dash?
No, that uses a different motor. That's why I was saying here's like the Dash 9 motor block, this is the Bachmann version now, which is identical. Okay, and that's different. And they are making the gears stuff available soon. Your announcement is supposed to be soon, from a couple months ago.
That's what the Bachmann official said.
I will tell you all, I learned my lesson, 15, 20 years ago. The way the trains are made, and I've been to the Bachmann the plant. The last 10 to 50 locos that come in from China, Japan, Germany, it's a parts piece. That's what they get, and that's it for us, the consumers, to deal with. Unless the VP of the company says, "Oh, we got a bunch of problems like the shades where all the blocks fell apart, and we gave free ones." Okay, let's see how this goes. We'll piece it out, pulling from what we get, and for brand new locomotives till we can't tolerate that anymore. Then we'll make a piece order, and we'll see if we can get that in 6 months. And it's not going to get any better. So, that's why. Motors are one thing. Gears, we're lucky to have people like Jerry, and there's plenty of other gears out there to get. Most of the companies have them, but I want you to understand that I'm pushing people now. You get a train, do not take it and say, "Oh, it's good, it runs great." Even if you don't have to take it apart, get a friend, get somebody club member, get somebody to help you, or call somebody, take it apart, check. It might be full of glop and crap, might be full of ants and bugs. Clean it out, put the lubricants in it. You'll thank me in the end. Okay. Lastly, we'll talk about USA. How many guys here have USA locomotives? Lots of it. Okay. So I brought along something that we are pretty familiar with, GP30, GP38s, right? Okay. What goes wrong with almost every USA train diesel? What's the number one problem? Can anybody tell me? Split axles. That is correct, sir. Okay. Get them. Boom, I can pull it apart. Okay. What do to fix this? Well, luckily, Charlie Rowe makes us a brand new set, like Bachmann and the other ones. So you can just call up and buy yourself a brand new one, right? Okay. Now they're not that bad. They're $24, I think. $22. Thank you. Okay, to get. But there are fixes for doing this if you're handy. Does anybody know what that is? With sleeving? Andrew?
Yeah.
You just did some.
Yeah, I fixed some of my own again. I can't remember the model on the K&S brass tube, if you can find it still. But it's already the right size. You can use a tubing cutter to spin it off. You can use a bench vise or a couple of sockets and a hammer to knock it together.
Knock it together. You
drive the sleeves over it.
Put that on. Hold the gear together. Yep, you can hold. Gluing the gear will never last. Everybody says, I don't care. I've got all those fancy gears and activators and cleaners. I have them all for fixing parts. But sleeving is one way to do it. I tell everybody, if you get a new gear from USA, the biggest problem I see is either they've sat on the shelf for a long time, we haven't run them, which doesn't really hurt LGB. The China plastics don't overlube, don't cake the gearbox full because it's got acetone type stuff in it, with oils. It can eat the plastics. We don't know if we got Delron, polyurethane. We don't know what's in there sometimes. So that's something I tell people to be careful with. All right. On USA's, the motors are nicely done because they're larger. If you get like this here, I should have a block out here. Well, I got one with an empty motor in it. So you can take these apart very easy. Everybody knows it's called the bottom skid shoe slide out. No ball bearings. They have those little brass rider gears that are like a spindle thing. Again, put your conductive lube in there. They won't eat the axles. Don't ask me why Aristos all eat a ball bearing to pieces because of China. The UFA's never eat them. Split gear only. Wheels where I put a little bit of lube on that, but they have the wings inside, that little screw that goes down with a long tab of wire. It looks like piano wire, so to speak. Okay. Tab of that on there.
What's that? Sitting.
That's the conductor.
Conductor.
Right. That'll take away the heat ratio and it won't eat. I get a lot of them come in and the wire's like this big, but it should be this big. And if I don't have it, I'll say, if you need the engine back tomorrow or it's running in a restaurant, I'll slide to one side. You're going to have to pick up on one, not on the other. Ways you don't need it because the nice thing about USA is you've got all 6 pickups. You've got the wheels, you got the skid shoes, and the pickup. So that's really makes it well. The thing we wanted to show you, that's why I brought these crazy gears so I can show you what happens when you don't do it. And this is not exaggerated. This particular one came out of a Bachmann motor block that's an Aristo, the remake, all right? And that lasted 9 months. So, is the plastics and the metals better or worse? Some of the Chinese steel I worked on is hard as a rock. But all it takes is a cheap component inside that to chew it neat to pieces and you're done. Okay, lastly, we're going to talk about the new diesel that Bachmann hoopla about everything. Okay? It has a ball bearing set inside a gearbox, and I did not bring this because I didn't know we were going to talk about Aristo that much, but since I'm going to go here a little bit. Basically what it has a gearbox inside, 2 ball bearings to ride on, 2 ball bearings for the gear inside. Okay? The ones inside the gearbox last, the ones on the outside, same problem. We get the floppies. Okay? Once you got the floppies, depending on how bad it is, you're touching with your little test to make sure it runs. Put the lube in there and say your 10 Hail Marys and 4 Earl Fathers and run it. Otherwise, for now, you are buying a motor block. Okay? We do not have all the parts available yet for that. Okay? We're not that fortunate. Hopefully someday we will be, because Bachmann claims they're going to make them for us. But now we do have motor blocks, and I think they list for 225 amperes. That sound about right?
I'm not sure if they're
Well,
that
the
much or
cost
not.
is like 140 something. I think.
Yeah, I think that's the price I saw, and it was close to that.
Well, you guys go, holy cow! Who that wants to pay $80-90 for an 8-liner motor block? I don't, but I do. Because we need it for all those other Aristo projects. So now we've got dual motors and how many gears in here? So hopefully they'll have that come soon. Questions? Yes.
Talk about Bachmann. Say for the older ones, have a order of Bachmann.
040?
Yeah,
The one with the big tank or just a little cheap settler?
the big saddle tank.
The big saddle tank.
Can I get the bottom piece of that goes on the bottom of the block, motor block? Can I get?
Wait a minute. The way that engine came is the block did not come separate. It's part of the bottom cast.
Right.
Okay. Oh.
And the bottom plate that bolts up to it, I hit something.
You can't get them. Bachman has that whole piece, and it's ridiculous. It's like $145 to buy the whole thing. Because it's a great made engine for Bachman, very well made, very well designed. Some of the earlier 040s, like the set one, the gear split in the drive, you can't get it either. It's whole mechanism. Now those you can buy the mechanism separate, but the Spectrum versions that made the square tanks and the saddle tank, both of those had a whole entire. So this would come as an 040 with a plate with it, unfortunately. Well, for no more questions, I enjoyed speaking with you guys. I hope I gave you some knowledge and insight to take care of your trains. When you buy something, make sure you get it checked. All right.
Thank you.